Hello. You've caught me playing a game I've already finished, despite the fact I have a backlog longer than Pinocchio's nose after the Fairy Tale Character Society's annual poker night. It's because I'm playing one of those games that carries on after the end. You know the ones. Games that just don't know when they're finished. That offer you new challenges or areas after you've stuck what you thought was the ultimate weapon up the backside of what you thought was the final boss. I'm talking New Game Plus, secret dungeons, optional mega bosses, content that is basically the game saying to you,
"So, you think you finished me, do you?"
And like the stubborn, easily provoked idiot I am, I take the bait. You're not better than me, game. I've played you for 70 hours now. I'm not leaving until I've beaten everything you've got. Here are 7 games that get even better after you finish them. First up, we've got the game that inspired this list for me, Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom. Incredibly, I've actually finished it. It's very rare for me nowadays to finish anything that isn't either A, 3 hours long, or B, called Final Fantasy something or other. But then the game was all like, actually, no, you haven't finished. Without spoiling anything story-wise, once you've seen the ending, Ni no Kuni 2 makes you an endgame offer you can't refuse. Extra side quests appear, some of them allowing you to recruit the last few citizens to your self-built Kingdom of Evermore, which in turn allows you to research and then craft some of the very best weapons in the game. One very specific side quest even gives you the ability to make a full set of legendary equipment, swords, guns, bows, armor, boots, the lot. Assuming you can find all the super rare materials, that is. Enter the 10th Dreamer's Maze, a 30-floor labyrinth of super tough monsters, culminating in a fight against a level 95 mega boss. This is the last thing I need to do for the Platinum Trophy. The maze is basically the ultimate challenge for your party, not counting the hours of aimless flying about you have to do to finish all the skirmishes. I hate skirmishes, I really do. But naturally, the maze also has exclusivity on Ni no Kuni 2's best and rarest loot. You can even find materials to craft gorgeous new endgame costumes for your party, and that's what it's all about really, isn't it? Showing off. Sharing a screenshot of Roland wearing his coolest threads is the video game equivalent of a humble bragging selfie. Look at this cool costume I've unlocked, essentially translates as, I finished the game and been in the really hard Dreamer's Maze, look at me. And yes, this entry is very much the list feature equivalent of a humble bragging shared screenshot. I finished Ni no Kuni 2. Look at me, look at me. I was going to include the original Metal Gear Solid as entry number 2, simply so I could talk about the stealth suit and how it lets you answer that question we've all asked ourselves at some point. What would you do if you were invisible? Turns out what I'd do if I was invisible would be to sneak into the toilet and murder everyone. But in the end I went for Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. A game you can technically finish in 1 hour. All you have to do is rescue 2 people and escape. Simple, but the beauty of Ground Zeroes is in how it opens up once you've finished that small chunk of story, like a beautiful delicate flower of stealthy replayability. You've got 4 side ops that can be tackled in various different ways. One of them even involves rescuing series creator Hideo Kojima.
What took you so long?
In one of the most wonderfully self-indulgent in-jokes you'll ever encounter in a game. When the self is Hideo Kojima, however, then I feel self-indulgement is to be actively encouraged. But for me, the absolute best bit of endgame content is the Deja Vu mission, unlocked once you've collected all the XOF patches scattered around Camp Omega. The Deja Vu mission has you recreating scenes from the original Metal Gear Solid on PS1, and for someone who likes Metal Gear as much as me, this mission was like being spoon-fed honeyed nostalgia butter while Solid Snake himself gave me a foot massage. I had my cake and ate it, then had even more cake. It helps that as a location,
Camp Omega is just pure, replayable paradise.
Big enough to offer dense and varied approaches to each mission, small enough that you can memorise the topography and guard patrols and so whiz through it like actual Big Boss would. Bottom line, thanks to the endgame, you can easily get 50 hours of enjoyment from what is narratively just 60 minutes of Phantom Pain prologue.
What is certain about entry number 3 is that if you haven't yet, you absolutely must play Oxenfree.
Now, I'm going to avoid spoilers as much as humanly possible here, but you know the drill, skip ahead if you really don't want to hear anything at all. Okay. So after you've finished Oxenfree, your save carries over into a second playthrough. Cool, you think, I'll see what happens if I make different decisions along the way.
But then dialogue options start creeping in that you're absolutely sure weren't there when you first played it.
Did I just miss all this first time round, you think? But no, it soon becomes obvious that the story has changed slightly because of the fact it's now your second playthrough. This is extremely clever, seeing as how one of Oxenfree's many narrative threads is all about time looping, of being unable to change the tragic events of the past, and so to have the characters within the game aware on a narrative level that they've all been here and done this before. Whereas most games would just be like, cool, play it again and make different choices and see what happens. Oxenfree actually weaves the fact you've seen the ending into the story on your second playthrough, which effectively means you haven't actually seen the ending. Is there an ending to Oxenfree? Who knows?
What is certain about entry number 3 is that if you haven't yet, you absolutely must play Oxenfree.
Entry 4 is Resident Evil 4's Mercenaries mode, unlocked after finishing the main game. Basically, this is both your reward for surviving the horror and also the ultimate challenge of your gun-wielding skill. The survival horror scares are replaced by something even more terrifying, a time limit. You're thrown into a handful of iconic locations from the main game.
Plus there's one made entirely from scratch, purely for mercenaries.
And asked to kill as many Gunardos as you can before the evacuation chopper lands to spoil the fun.
And typically, this is the one evacuation chopper in the history of Resident Evil that doesn't get shot down.
Chain your kills together and you'll rack up a combo, giving you higher scores and eventually the ability to unlock bigger and better weapons and additional characters to play as. It's the ultimate test of your Resident Evil 4 abilities. You can even take down really tough enemies for mega points if you're good enough, and it's basically a free extra game with super cool music and that all too familiar addictive lure of playing over and over and over, slightly improving your score each time.
I first played Resident Evil 4 13 years ago on PS2, and I can pretty much guarantee I'll be playing the native 32K Ultra Mega Giga HD remaster on PlayStation 9 as well.
Entry 5 is Dragon's Dogma, an utterly brilliant open-world RPG you really should check out if you've polished off The Witcher 3 and your 24th playthrough of Skyrim and are looking for more epic fights against dragons the size of small mountains. Without going into specifics, Dragon's Dogma does that thing only cool RPGs do, and lets you roam around a post-final boss open world that's had, how shall I put this, a slight makeover.
By that I mean a massive chasm has ripped through the entire world, completely destroying some locations and drastically changing others.
Also, there's a brand new dungeon area down there in the Everfall 2, but that's the least of your problems, because there are now super powerful monsters all over the place and the sky's gone all dark. Congratulations on finishing the game. Have another massive side quest to sort the world out again. Whereas most games let you continue exploring from a point just before the final boss, Dragon's Dogma's world continues on after you've finished, so you get to live the happily ever after rather than just see it in a cutscene. You don't have to do any of this, of course. You can say you finished Dragon's Dogma after beating the final boss and just put it down and go on your merry way.
Yeah, no one's doing that. This, the end game, is the true test of your power.
much like entry number 6, Dark Souls 3. Now, I've been told, smugly, about 1,000,000 times by people like Nathan that
Dark Souls doesn't really begin until New Game Plus.
Dark Souls doesn't truly begin until New Game Plus. But it's true. If you want the biggest challenge and the toughest monsters and all your equipment and levels from previous playthroughs, then you have to do New Game Plus for the true Dark Souls experience. And then New Game Plus Plus. And then New Game Plus Plus Plus.
And so on until New Game Plus 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 Plus, whereupon the game is, according to the Dark Souls 3 wiki, 222% harder than regular Dark Souls 3.
Sounds like great fun, doesn't it? So, if, unlike me, you love a good challenge, Dark Souls 3 really is the epitome of games that get even better after you've finished them. Final entry, a game that doesn't really have an end, it's just one of those things that when you start, you're playing forever. Diablo 3, the ultimate loot drop RPG. There is a story, of course, that once finished, you can play over and over again, grinding your way to more powerful equipment, but the really cool thing about Reaper of Souls is that once you've finished Act 5, you unlock Adventure Mode, which provides structure to the endgame grind.
And really cool loot, we mustn't forget the loot.
Adventure Mode gives you bounties to complete across the game's acts, 5 in each, and you get a nice cache of sparkly things once you've done them all. A cache that could contain a legendary sparkly thing. Then there are the Nephilim Rifts, extra dungeons you can unlock by finding rift keys, which also give you an increased chance of legendary item drops.
It's the classic endgame grind wrapped in a lovely bow. And it's irresistible.
One more bounty. One more. Oh, I've got 5 keystone fragments now. Let's just do one more rift. And now just one more bounty, maybe.
Diablo 3 never ends.
And so there are 7 games that get even better after you finish them. Let us know in the comments if you can think of any other examples. Like this video if you enjoyed it. And please do join us again next week for another Friday feature. Thanks for watching.